Hey everybody. In class the last few days we've been talking about linear functions and linear relationships. Tonight we're going to talk about a very important aspect of linear relationships, which is the rate of change in the relationship. A rate of change compares a change in one quantity to a change in another quantity. For example, if you are paid $60 for working 5 hours, then your hourly wage is $12 per hour. A rate of change that describes how your pay increases with respect to time spent working. So this $12 per hour is the rate of change for your pay. And linear relationships always have a constant rate of change. That's very important for linear relationships. When you're working at a job, you always get $12 per hour, right? Unless you get a raise. When we're dealing with the rate of change, we can find it by using a formula that just uses one operation. When we're looking for the rate of change, all we have to do is take the change in the output. In the example above, we were looking at the change in money. That's the output. And we divide that by the change in the input, which is the hours, right? We divide $60 by 5 hours, and we get $12 per hour. So to find the rate of change for any situation, we take the change in output over the change in input. In example A here, we have an internet cafe, and the table shows the cost of using a computer at an internet cafe for a given amount of time. Find the rate of change in cost with respect to time. So our time here is our input, right? We use X to represent the inputs, and we use Y to represent the outputs, which is the cost. So we want to find the change in cost over the change in time. Now, another word for change is difference, right? When you change something, you make it different. And to find the difference in the cost, we can use subtraction. So if we're going to look at the change in cost, all we have to do is figure out how we went from 7 to 14, and that's just 14 minus 7. And to find the change in time, we just have to subtract 2 of the time values, 4 minus 2. So the change in cost was $7 to go from 7 to 14, right? That's plus 7. And 4 minus 2 gives us 2, because the change in time from 2 to 4 was just plus 2, right? Positive 2. So here we have our rate of change, 7 over 2. So it goes up $7 every 2 hours. So this is one way we can write our answer. And another way we could write our answer is as a decimal. 7 over 2 is the same as 3.5. And since we took dollars divided by hours, this is $3.50 per hour. And that is our rate of change. In example B, we can do pretty much the same thing. The table shows the distance a person walks for exercise. Find the rate of change in distance with respect to time. So when we're walking, our distance is our output, right? That's how many miles we actually walk, and the time is the input, because we can use the minutes to figure out how many miles we travel. So to find our rate of change, we need to find the change in distance, and then divide that by the change in time. So if I use these two numbers right here to find my change in distance, to go from 1.5 to 3, right, we just find the difference in those two numbers. And we do the same thing with the time. To go from 30 to 60, I just do 60 minus 30, and I get 1.5 over 30. When we divide 1.5 by 30, we get 0.05. And since we divided the miles, the change in miles, by the change in minutes, this is 0.05 miles per minute is our rate of change. Our distance changes by 0.05 miles every minute. In example C here, we have a graph that shows the attendance at a community theater play. So the play ran for 10 consecutive weeks, and the graph shows the attendance for the performances in weeks 1, 4, 6, and 10. And we want to find the rates of change in attendance with respect to time. Now notice my graph is not a straight line here. So this is not going to be a linear relationship, but we can still find the rate of change for the different parts of the graph. So let's actually label these. Let's label this part A, we'll label the second part B, and we'll label the third part C. And that way this will let us separate a little bit. So for part A, we want to find the rate of change. So we need to find the change in attendance. I'm going to abbreviate attendance here over the change in the number of weeks. Okay, so from 1/124 to 4/232, we've got to figure out how much the attendance changed. Went from 124 to 232. So to find that, we can just subtract 232 minus 124. And then for the change in weeks, that was the fourth week was 232 people, and the first week was 124 people. So now we can just subtract, and we get 108 in the numerator, we get 3 in the denominator. And when we divide those, we get 36. So that's our rate of change. 36 people per week. Let's put people per week is what the attendance increased by from week 1 to week 4. Now for section B of our graph, we're going to do the same thing. From week 4 to week 6, the attendance went from 232 people to 204 people. Now, to find the change, I'm still going to start with that last number, and I'm going to subtract the first number. And we have, for the weeks, we have 6 minus 4. Now, in our numerator here, we actually are going to get a negative number, negative 28. In our denominator, we have 2. So our rate of change is negative 14 people per week. And that seems odd until we look at our graph and we see that our graph was actually decreasing. So it makes sense that our rate of change should be negative because we are going down. Our change is negative. And for our last section of the graph, we have part C. It went from 204 people down to 72 people. So we'll do the same thing, 72 minus 204, and we'll divide that by 10 minus 6. So 72 minus 204 gives us negative 132 divided by 4. And when we simplify that, we get negative 33 people per week was the rate of change. And that makes sense because when we had negative 14, we were going down a little bit, but when we had negative 33, see our graph is going down even steeper. So there we have our rate of change for each of those parts of the graph. So this is our last example for tonight. You can go ahead and finish up your notes, submit it through Canvas, and I will see you all on Monday.